Yeah, it's a really interesting way of putting it. It does feel like we have two incumbents effectively running against each other, right? Brianna, I want to turn to the literal incumbent in this situation, Joe Biden, the president, and talk about an issue you've had an eye on, and that is his standing with younger voters right now. Younger voters, Gen Z voters, millennial voters. I mean, these are typically voters who vote Democratic, who voted in pretty big numbers for Joe Biden when he ran against Trump in 2020. But we are seeing signs in our reporting and in polling that his support is slipping and potentially slipping further right now. And so I wonder, one, what you attribute that to, why we are seeing that happen, and two, what the long term implications could be for Biden, for the Democrats, among a group of voters that they've really sort of counted on for a long time as a core part of their constituency.
Yeah, well, I think that support that we're seeing that's been waning has been waning over the years. It's just kind of not a new phenomenon. I think when Biden was elected, he campaigned on a lot of big promises that young people wanted to see, including student loan forgiveness, a really robust climate change plan, our economy, inflation, swinging us out of a pandemic. And young voters have not felt like they've seen these promises delivered, specifically with student loan forgiveness, which we know was a Supreme Court decision, but ultimately, or excuse me, not a Supreme Court decision, but was ultimately challenged, but was not delivered to them, and that was also a really big promise for Biden. As also looking at just the economy and inflation, and the cost of living, young voters, particularly again Gen Z and millennials, who will likely make up 40% of the electorate in 2024, are a big base to Biden, and they are extremely important voting bloc, and so we're seeing that support that's waning right now is not brand new. But I also think that specifically the conflict in Israel and between Gaza has become kind of like the newest pressure point for Biden with young voters. And I would probably, attribute that especially to the experts that we've spoken to, at least, that have, described this as a really big generational shift between younger voters and older voters. But again, just some of the parallels that younger voters see between, the treatment of minorities in the U.S. versus the treatment of Palestinians. You also have a lot of voters who, quite frankly, don't feel like Biden has campaigned for their vote. It's really difficult to kind of campaign on this constant just drawing contrast to Trump, whereas Biden has not campaigned much at all. And a lot of young voters that we've spoken with on the trail at universities feel like their vote might be taken for granted. And again, it does feel like a very likely 2020 rematch between Biden and Trump. And so that kind of idea has been just dreaded by a lot of the voters that we've spoken to of all ages that happen to be Democrats or Democratic leaning. And so there's kind of this fatigue between a lack of options, which is just, Joe Biden and not a really strong primary challenger, as well as just delivering on his promises and what he'll be able to accomplish in 2024.